It'll catch. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Planning Committee. In the interest of safety, if the continuous alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and the public gallery. Do not attempt to use the lifts, and please assemble in the front of the University building, the King Henry building, at the end of King Henry I Street, which is the street which leads down towards the sea. In order to comply with the Portsmouth Cultural Trust and Fire Marshal regulations, try saying that fast, please remember to sign out when you leave the building after today's meeting. For those of you who have not attended this meeting before, I will explain the running order for this afternoon. After committee members have declared their interests and agreed the minutes of the previous meeting, I will announce each item and ask those of you who are here to make a deputation to come and sit at the table. After the planning officer has made the presentation for the application, individual deputies will have 6 minutes to express their views, and joint deputies will have 12 minutes between them to make their views known. After which, you take no further part in the proceedings unless we need to ask a question to clarify a statement that has been made. Members will then ask questions, make comments, and the decision on the application will be made. Both members of the committee and members of the public are reminded of the need to consider material planning matters and not to refer to any personal information about other members of the public. Should they so do, I will stop them and ask them to leave. May I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be live streamed from a camera at a fixed location at the back of the meeting room, and the recording will be on the Council's website. The camera will mainly capture the backs of those making deputations, but there will be some footage of those making deputations as they approach and leave the table, where the microphones are located, and of people entering or leaving the room whilst the meeting is in progress. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Finally, may I ask everyone to use the microphones provided when they are speaking. It is the single button on the right-hand side. Press down, a red light will appear. Now, before we proceed, for the benefit of members in the public gallery, I think we'll go around the table and introduce the people who are here. I am Councillor Hugh Mason, the Councillor for St Jude Ward, and I am the chairman of this meeting.
My name is Kieran Laven and I'm the planning solicitor.
I'm Jane Didino, local democracy officer.
I'm David Penrose, Democratic Services Officer.
Judith Smythe, Ward Councillor for St Jude and Vice Chair of the Committee.
Susie Horton, Councillor in Central Southsea Ward.
Lynn Stagg, Councillor for Baffins Ward. Donna Jones, Hillsey Ward.
Jo Hooper, Councillor for Paulsgrove.
Luke Stubbs, East Caryswater.
And Steve Pitt, Central Southsea Ward.
Niall McAteer, Senior Planning Officer.
Claire Upton-Brown, Assistant Director, City Development.
Thank you. I wish to, before we start, to tell members that there will be a briefing at the end of this meeting on enforcement. Enforcement matters are now coming to the fore more than they have in the past, and I have asked Claire Upton-Brown to give us a briefing. But in order that we can get on with the business of today, I'm putting that right at the end. Do I have any apologies for absence? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Gemma New.
Right, thank you. Declarations of members' interests. Right, we'll go down the table. Councillor Smythe.
Chairman, I just wanted to explore whether or not I had a conflict of interest as a member of the Labour Party who is selling Unity Hall to the developer, whatever developer comes forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Having discussed this with you earlier, I understand you are a member of the Labour Party, not a trustee of the Labour Party trust that would be involved in the sale of this site, and therefore I'm of the view that this is not a pecuniary interest that bars you from sitting on the application. However, you must direct yourself to the question of whether you can approach this application with an open mind, an unfettered mind, and that is down to you to make a call on.
Chair, it's my view I should take myself out of the room for that item, because I don't want misunderstandings about effect on future valuation within my party, and nor do I want any other party to think that I had any influence on the price of the land, which is going to incur when we sell the land. So will I just walk out and somebody will fetch me back, would they? Or?
Yes, we'll fetch you back.
Okay.
We want you back for the end.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's really important to...
Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have a pecuniary interest in item 1, in that one of the deputies, Darren Brewer, is a close friend.
Will you be staying for that item? No, you'll be leaving.
I'll leave the room.
Thank you. Councillor Stubbs.
Yeah, I know, so I was just to put on record, I also know Darren Brewer. I don't consider it pecuniary.
Welcome to Councillor Udi.
Hello.
Do you have any interest to declare?
Probably not. I used to be in the Labour Party and then you got the Labour clubs, but no, cool.
Okay. Minutes of the previous meeting. Members, you will have received the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on Wednesday the 17th of October. I will take them first of all for accuracy. Page 1. Councillor Hooper.
Very hurtful, you've let me off. And I was present last time.
Yes, indeed you were. Can it be noted that Councillor Hooper was present last time? Anything else on page 1? Page 2? Page 3? Page 4? Page 5? Page 6? Yes, Councillor Smythe?
Chair, I wondered if we could turn to page 6 and add the word storage after movement in reason number 2. I remember that we were particularly concerned about the fact that the bin storage was inside under the stairs, as well as the fact that it would be difficult to move it round at the back.
That is true.
So I think we should probably say storage, movement and storage.
Movement and storage of cars, bicycles and bins in the penultimate line. Right, thank you. With that, are people content that these are a correct record?
Thank you, Chair.
Are there any matters which are arising? Thank you. Well, I will sign a copy as a correct record of that meeting with the amendments. We now come to item 3 on the agenda, updates on previous planning applications by the Assistant Director of City Development.
I have a few matters this afternoon to bring to the committee's attention. The first is I just want to introduce Simon Turner, who's sitting at the end as the new second team leader in the DM team, along with Alan, who's a team leader. The second item is just to confirm that we have the Queen's Hotel appeal hearing at the end of the month, and I will be setting up a members' briefing following our further meeting with the consultant who's working on our behalf for some time next week, so just to highlight that to members. And then also just to confirm that the enforcement policy report that was taken through PRED was agreed, so that enforcement policy will be published on the website. And also the viability, so changes to the way we deal with viability, both through the plan making process and through planning applications, which I referred to at the last committee, was also agreed at PRED, and therefore will be working in line with national guidance going forward, and that means that members will have visibility on viability assessments as part of the planning process and during the committee meetings.
Are there any questions on the report? No, thank you. We now move to planning applications. The first one is 132 Laburnum Grove. Would Mr. Darren Brewer and Mr. Philip Moore please come to the table?
With your permission, can I hand out some brochures?
Yes, you may.
Okay, thank you.
But anything which is handed to the committee becomes the property of the committee. Right, when those have gone around, can we have the officer's report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. This application relates to 132 Laburnum Grove. It's a mid-terrace property located between the junctions of Bellevue Road and Burlington Road. The proposal seeks a change of use from a Class C4 HMO to a 7-bed, 12-person HMO. The above slide indicates the HMO count data for the surrounding area. Of the 71 properties located within the 50-metre radius of the application site, 3 are considered to be in use as a HMO, inclusive of the application site. As a result of this proposal, the density of HMOs in the surrounding area would remain at 4.23%, and the principle of the development, therefore, is acceptable. The above slides show the front and rear elevations of the application site. There's a front forecourt used for the storage of bins. To the rear there is external seating areas and also capabilities for bike storage. The floor plans in front of you, as members, indicate the layout of the property over 3 floors. The property has been granted a HMO licence until August 2023, and there are a total of 7 bedrooms, 7 en-suites to each of the bedrooms, and communal living facilities located at the ground floor also. Bedrooms 1, 2, 3, 5 and 6 would be capable of double occupation, whilst bedrooms 4 and 7 will be capable of single occupation. All of the proposed bedrooms are in excess of the minimum size standards identified in the HMO SPD, and 6 of the 7 rooms are in excess of 10 metres squared. These photos just indicate the communal living space in the property. The space has a floor area of 34.8 metres squared, which is 7.8 metres in excess of the minimum standard. The property provides adequate facilities, as you can see, for the cooking, for the storage and preparation of food, as well as seating areas both internally and externally. Each of the bedrooms are in excess of the minimum size standards. They all have a reasonable degree of light, ventilation and outlook, and each of the bedrooms include desk space and TV as well. Again, this just goes to highlight the sanitary facilities in the property. We have 7 ensuite bathrooms, each containing a WC shower unit and a basin, and there is a bath in some of the units as well. Finally, this slide just demonstrates the additional amenities provided to the residents of the property. You've got your bicycle storage here, which is secure and waterproof, internal and external seating areas, facilities for laundry, as well as bin storage, and the desks and the TVs in the room. On the basis of the scheme's compliance with the HMO SPD and the provision of a suitable standard of living accommodation, the recommendation is for conditional permission. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brewer, Mr. Moore, you have 6 minutes each.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. I founded ProPods approximately 1 year ago, and I set out on a journey to create a new way for modern young professionals to live together within the city. I believe that the traditional style of HMO properties restrict individuals to interact with other tenants on a daily basis. Our typical professional is aged between 21 and 35 years old, works 10 to 11 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week, and wants to come home and have the choice of interacting with others who also work in a similar professional environment. As an example, we have currently housed a graduate dentist who accepted a job at QA Hospital and wanted a good quality room, but unfortunately could not find one until he found a ProPod property. We currently have various properties under the ProPod brand, and from our and from the majority of these tenants, under the ProPod plan, and from our evidence, a majority of these tenants have relocated to Portsmouth to take up new jobs within the city and surrounding areas. With ProPods being able to offer a top quality room within our houses, this has enabled a smooth relocation transition for the individual, thus boosting the local economy. Our rooms vary in price from £495 for a single room up to £750 for a couple's room. All our rooms exceed the minimum size standards set by PCC, and we have also exceeded on the communal areas, allowing our tenants to enjoy the property they co-live in. All of our rear gardens are landscaped and fitted with outdoor furniture, and we incorporate technology into all of our properties, from keyless entry, communal iPads, and a house WhatsApp group, allowing all our tenants to have a 24/7 interaction with ProPods. Overall, I believe ProPods is becoming an established co-living property provider within Portsmouth and the surrounding areas. I hope you've enjoyed viewing the pictures we have provided to the planning officer and reading through the ProPod brochure, which you have been provided as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillors, good afternoon. My name is Philip Moore. I'm the developer and principal behind this particular application, together with a number of other properties. And I'm really here just to give an overview from my perspective as an investor. And I'm delighted to say I was here roughly this time last year for a first application together with Darren at ProPods for a property in Clarence Road, which you very kindly granted planning for us for what we describe as the professional HMO. I was equally pleased that when I asked the question directly of the members, would I be encouraged with this concept, and I was told, and it will be minuted I'm sure, that yes I did, and this was exactly what we should be looking to try and do. And Claire actually, I think Claire may have chaired, or certainly was present. I took that as a come on then, get on with it, shows the colour of the money. And I'm pleased to say that since then we have acquired a number of properties with exactly this concept. And on the train on the way here, I was looking at preparing slightly for this, or preparing for it, not slightly. And something I hadn't quite appreciated until I did that exercise. Of 4 particular houses that we've acquired in the last 12 months, we quote displaced, close quote, either single occupiers or elderly couples. So a total displacement of 6 people. And actually, when I totted it up, we've actually now created, from that displacement, inverted commas, those 6 elderly people, we've created 30 rooms for professional occupiers. This is done, it's happened, it's not just made up marketing. In addition, the current position, which I think I have been given some caution on this, but I think you have to know it as it is, because I want to know whether I'm going to continue to be encouraged for the next 12 months or whether you're going to say anything that might discourage me. So the current situation is we've got 37 rooms for occupation, I beg your pardon, 37 occupiers, which isn't necessarily the same as rooms, because we have double occupancy and some of our rooms which have been granted by the planners on other of our properties. And if you kindly consider the application today for an extra 4 in effect, that'll take us up to 41 professional rooms. We have in hand another 12 occupied rooms coming through, which will be ready hopefully with the wind in the right direction Christmas, but in reality that'll be January because of the Christmas break. And then a further 11 rooms coming through by Easter. So it's a total of 64 professional rooms in hand, controlled and owned by me and my family and managed by ProPods. I also want to publicly thank Mrs. Upton Brown and the planning team under considerable resource constraint to have helped, assisted as much as they can within the confines of the planning process. But I'd also like to say that if it didn't quite take as long as it has been, we could have doubled their throughput. That's a slightly political point. It's basically saying if the planning's resource better, we could be doing more of this. But I do want to publicly thank the planning committee, as indeed I want to Mr. Levine and his senior Mr. Bulff, who've dealt with a few applications of certificates of lawful use for us in a very efficient, professional manner. And I think it's appropriate that local officers are complimented on a good job under difficult circumstances. So really it's about, is the door still open? Am I pushing on an open door, or am I going to have to get the axe out to hack the door down? I'm not interested in the latter. If you like what we're doing, please say so. If you don't, then equally say so, and we'll consider our plans for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think it's not so much a case of whether we like it or not like it, but how it fits in with planning legislation, because that is what we are here to determine. Right, members, there are two elements to this. One is the increase from 7-bed, 7-person to 12-person HMO, and the second element is the construction of the rear single-story extension. Thank you. Not doing well this afternoon. Questions, members? Councillor Pitt.
Thank you, Chair. Could we just get some clarification that the ensuite room sizes that are specified are in addition to the bedroom statement, or are they actually the bits of the bedrooms that are en suites?
No, so the proposed floor plans in front of you, they're annotated. That is
sorry,
accurate.
I didn't have one, Niall, sorry.
Councillor Smythe.
I've got a question about bins and storage. People will know I'm worried about bins and HMOs at the moment. This is on page 8 of the report. It says that there'll be 2 black refuse bins and 2 green cycling bins. I just wondered if we had any idea if that wasn't sufficient for the rubbish from 7, albeit small, households, what the solution would be to avoid any likelihood of bin bags being rejected by the people who are collecting waste.
I've spoken with the waste management team. I've sent photo evidence of the existing setup, which is 2 black bins, 2 green bins, and they're happy enough with the situation as it stands at the minute.
They're going to collect. They are going to accept more than 3 bins in the.
They've indicated
3 bags in the bin, are they?
They haven't indicated any concerns with the collection of refuse at the property.
And presumably, if there was a problem, you would buy some more bins, would you?
We've actually purchased bigger bins, so they're not the standard of, if I'm correct here, 2 40-litre bins. They're actually 2 360-litre bins, and these are more than adequate from what we're seeing at the moment.
If you've got bigger bins, will they be collected by within the new contract?
No.
I have, as I say, consulted with the waste management team, and they haven't outlined any concerns with the collection of refuse, and that consultation was done just a week ago, so they are content with the arrangement of bins at the property as it stands.
Another question, what is the minimum size for a bedroom? I can't remember offhand.
For a single bedroom it is 7.5 metres squared. For a double bedroom it's 11.5 metres squared.
In other words, for very thin people?
If that's how you want to look at it, maybe, yeah.
Could the officer please give us details of the single-storey rear extension, which is part of this application?
Yes, so the single-storey rear extension has already been constructed. You can see it in this image here. I believe this is an original projection, and the extension is in this area here. Again, it's been finished in matching materials to improve the design aspect of the extension.
Right, there was such a size it did not need planning permission. Would that be the case?
It hasn't been interpreted as permitted development. The applicant has decided to apply for it with the planning application in order to have planning permission signed off for both the extension and for the change of use.
So we have a retrospective application for planning permission for the extension.
In regards to the extension, yes, that is correct.
Right.
I can see the applicants shaking their head. The previous plan and application for a change of use to 7 persons sui generis also included the extension as part of that, so planning permission has been granted as far as the applicants are concerned.
As far as the planning section is concerned, have they been granted planning permission? This is the question I'm getting at.
Yes, planning permission has been granted for the single-storey rear extension. The inclusion of the extension in this application is probably down to a validation error as the reason that's included in the description of the proposal.
Any other questions, members? Councillor Hooper?
Sorry. I just note here on page 8, it says the proposal would have an expected parking demand of 2 spaces. I don't know if I'm being a little naive here, but if we've got suddenly 12 people and they're all professionals working in different parts of the city, we already know in North End that we've got a massive parking demand. We don't have enough parking. Potentially that could be 12 cars.
We have Peter Hayward from the local highways authority with us. Perhaps Peter, you would like to clarify on that matter?
Yeah, I wasn't consulted directly on this application. We've got standing advice for HMOs. The parking standards require 2 spaces for a property which is developed in this way, in the same way they do for an ordinary house. So we don't have scope to require any additional parking within the planning policy framework.
We're hoping then that all these people are cyclists and can get to work easily. Won't need a car.
I think the answer to that one is probably yes. Councillor Stagg, you had a question.
I just wanted to make sure that the paving or whatever it is in the rear garden is porous, you know, I mean, so to say, any water, excess water.
It would be a matter that's controlled under building regulations. Perhaps the applicant might be able to confirm.
There's a couple of points. Yes, we have ACO drains that run around the whole outside of the rear extension. You probably can't see it from the photos, and the paving is on a slight slope to allow that water to run off into the ACO drains. I don't want to get into a parking issue, but just out of interest, out of the 8 occupiers we have at the moment, only 2 drive. We are finding is, for instance, QA hospital staff cannot park their car, and as such they want to be close to a bus stop where they can actually get on the bus and drive to QA, and that's happening in North End. And examples of this house, we have a Virgin Atlantic staff member who actually trains it to Gatwick Airport, and we find that the majority of people are actually want to be close to their workplace, so they don't actually have to drive. It's quite an interesting concept that we've actually noticed as we've developed these houses. I don't disagree that obviously I understand the concerns of the councillors, but we are very much finding that actually these propodians, as I probably call them, as tenants, actually do not want to drive in this city. We've actually had little conversations about providing moped space actually on the front forecourts at a later date, because we've had a couple of people ask us actually if we bought a Lambretta, could we actually store it on the front forecourt? So I think that answers those concerns for this moment in time.
Any further questions, members? No, we move to comments. Councillor Stubbs.
During his deputation, Mr. Moore invited us to talk a bit about some of the principles here, and I'll get to a recommendation of what I think should happen at the end, but I will say a bit about houses and multiple occupation. So, you know, I recognise that with the imbalance between household formation and housing completion, so that any difference is going to end up being met in houses of multiple occupation, and that's inevitable. I think that we've seen a few applications. We've had some high quality HMOs, seen a few of those lately, and they look very livable as spaces to rent and to live in. I think I would, if I lived next door to one, I would be concerned. I'd be concerned about noise, I'd be concerned about parking, and I quite understand why I suspect the nearby residents would much prefer this application to be refused. In an ideal world, I would like to see co-living blocks developed in the city centre, but obviously that's market driven. People have to decide to want to do them, but if there's a developer out there who's interested, then you know, I, at least as a member of this committee, would start off quite supportive in principle. On this application, as with all applications, we need to make decisions based upon planning law. I don't think we should be playing games on the planning committee here. It's very clear this application accords with the plan. You know, there are no conflicts between this and the planning policy that we have, and therefore we are duty bound to approve it, and so I recommend approval. I move the report.
Councillor Pitt.
I'm happy to second that, Chair, and agree pretty much with everything that Councillor Stubbs has said. A few comments. With regard to giving the applicant future indications for subsequent planning applications, I'm minded to comment that it's the job of the Planning Committee to consider every single application on its individual merits and not on a trend basis. However, that said, we have previously, and I think I was on the committee at that time too, indicated that what we want to see if we're having shared housing is good quality shared housing with decent sized rooms and not double bedrooms being subdivided into single bedrooms just to cram more and more people in. The houses in Laburnum Grove are large, and it's finding that balance between losing family homes in the city but also being able to accommodate an ever-growing demand where young working individuals and even couples are finding it impossible to get on the property ladder and need an alternative route. And if that alternative route is going to be provided, it needs to be of good quality, and I don't think there's anything in this case to demonstrate that it isn't, and would certainly the room sizes, etc., are vastly in excess of the minimum standards, which is good to see. In terms of the parking situation, one that's been thrashed through just pretty much every planning application that we ever see in this city, and it is true that for some bizarre reason there is no additional consideration given to shared houses in terms of the number of spaces being allocated. 2 spaces for a house of 12 people. I think we can all see that there could be problems there, although I accept the reassurances given by Mr. Brewer today. But it's, you know, there's an end game to be played out here somewhere. Either that, or we're going to become known as Parking City, because you won't be able to drive here, you'll only be able to park here. But that's a fight for another day. In regards to some of the comments of Councillor Smythe about bags in bins, it's the number of bags you can get in the bin, not the number of bags. So advising tenants to change the bin bag more regularly and squash things down means that you can get half a dozen bags plus into one of those bins with a bit of creativity, so it really shouldn't be a problem. There is also, of course, for large houses with an assessed need, the ability to purchase additional bags should they need them, but unlikely in this case. Most of the HMOs I'm spoken to, 5 adults are coping with a large bin with just a little bit of extra thought. My biggest concern for this is that, as I've raised on a number of occasions on this committee, the HMO data in the north of the city is pitiful. The very idea that the number of applications we've seen for Laburnum Grove seem to be indicating that at the start of the last couple of years there were virtually none there, which I know from delivering leaflets there during election time is categorically not true. You've only got to look through the front door to see the subdivisions, and we absolutely need to do a piece of work with the greatest urgency to make sure that we are maintaining mixed and balanced communities in this city and not just using the 10% rule as a rubber stamp due to lack of data. And I just wanted to make sure that I reiterated that, as I have on many occasions in the past, because it's not fair that we end up sandwiching somebody or creating 3 in a row by accident. We need better reporting and better information around that. The final comment I would say, however, is that these kind of shared units, when they are of high quality, absolutely meet a need for key worker housing in Portsmouth, so that young professionals, particularly as QA as you identified. Those coming to work for our GPs practices in the city, and also in particular the need for key worker teachers, newly qualified teachers, etc., to be able to come and live and work here affordably is crucial, and that's why I'm very happy to second Councillor Stubbs' proposal.
I would certainly agree with you on the matter of the need for accurate information about HMOs. We would point out that this property itself already has the permission to be a house of multiple occupation. Councillor Stagg.
Yes, it's just something on the parking issues. Just want to point out, although the houses are very wide there, there's still only room for 1.5 cars outside each house, so there is a finite amount. But also coming back to, just from something that happened recently, somebody put in an application for Laburnum Grove to have the front forecourts turned into the off-street parking, and they're not big enough. So it's just to warn you really, don't even go down that road because you won't get it because it does not fit the criteria. Okay.
Councillor Horton.
Just to reinforce some of the things that have been said, I just think it's really nice to see such high quality shared accommodation coming to this committee. And I've said, I think all the years I've been on planning, I've said consistently that a lot of us around here started off not being able to buy a house, and actually the thought of staying in some of the accommodation that I get to see in my ward, I certainly wouldn't want to do that. So if it was good enough for me, then it's good enough for other people. And particularly just to reinforce what Councillor Pitt said about teachers coming into the city, this is definitely something we want to work on. So it's a real pleasure to see such high quality accommodation.
Any other comments? No, we move to the vote. With those members in favour of the proposal that change of use be granted, please indicate. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Sorry, conditional report. Yeah. Could somebody put their head around the door and invite Councillor Jones back in? Would Mr. Andrew Whiteley and Mr. Neil O'Donnell please come to the table? Members? Councillor Stubbs? Hello. Yes. Members will recall that we have seen two previous applications for this site, one for 96 study bedrooms and one which was for 80 study bedrooms. And outline permission was granted for the 80 study bedrooms in September 2018. This is a new application for 123 studio flats, including ancillary facilities, and I would ask the officer to make a report to us.
Thank you, Chair. The report does mention that any comments received from Southern Water would be updated at the meeting. I have had a response from them. Southern Water say that a connection to the public sewage system is required and to be given by them. They are requesting a condition that details of proposed means of foul and surface water drainage disposal be agreed by planning condition. I'll come back to that in a moment. So it's quite a prominent corner site with road frontages onto Holbrook Road and Coburg Street near the Arundel Street roundabout. To the north you have a neighbourhood park and Lord's Court, 4-storey properties. To the east are some City Council owned garages and 3-storey Wigmore House and Portsmouth Deaf Centre to the south. Most of the site, as can be seen in the photograph, is occupied by existing buildings, Unity Hall, that is now vacant. So this is Unity Hall on Holbrook Road, the Coburg Street frontage, and the view from within the adjoining neighbourhood park. A few more images. Coburg Street with the garages in here. Oh, there they are. Sorry, I do apologise. Garages there. And then from the adjoining properties, including Holbrook Road. As you've already mentioned, there is an existing outline permission for a Part 5 and Part 10 storey halls of residence. This is the ground floor layout for that development. It was for a halls of residence of 80 units with each being 25 square metres. The outline permission approved the layout, scale and appearance of the development, leaving only access and landscaping that could be the subject of reserved matters approval. This is the Holbrook Road elevation of the previously approved scheme. And these are the 3D images for those members that were at the committee when that scheme was previously determined. This full application again proposes a halls of residence in Part 11 stories and Part 4 stories. Obviously it takes a quite different design approach, largely finished in brickwork. It's for 123 units, each just over 18 square metres, with the exception of 3 accessible units of 30.5 square metres. This particular scheme has all of the communal facilities at ground floor level, which is shown on this image here. So that's a gym, laundry, common areas here, communal dining, and I think that says plant room. At the top here is the typical layout of those upper floors. So each has 9 study bedrooms, and then this shows the typical lower level, the 4-storey, obviously over 3 floors of student halls, and these are typical layouts for each of those rooms. Obviously the lighter green being the accessible units. Two more images to show you, 2 more slides that is. The elevations of the proposal. So the north elevation is facing onto the neighbourhood park. The west elevation is onto Holbrook Road. south elevation onto Coburg Street, and finally the east elevation facing onto those City Council-owned garages and Wigmore House beyond. So the principle of a halls of residence and the principle of a tall building have previously been accepted on this site. At 11 stories in scale on the Holbrook Road frontage, this alternative proposal represents an increase of 1 floor, but the rear wing steps down to 4 stories, which is lower than the previous scheme. The design solution has received some criticism by the design review panel, and since then minor but important amendments have been introduced onto the north elevation, where this has now been wrapped round from the design on the Holbrook Road elevation onto the corner facing onto the park. The Highways Authority has raised objection in the absence of clarity around the students arriving at the beginning of term and obviously leaving at the end of the academic year. But the report suggests that to be consistent with the previous permission, that this was a matter that would be controlled through the Section 106 agreement. This is something that is considered capable of being resolved. So if I can basically sort of lead to the conclusions that are on page 31 of your report. Overall, the proposed development is considered to be acceptable in policy terms and will assist in the delivery of specialist student accommodation in the city. With the design amendment and additional details of the facade treatments and external materials, there's an example in the sheets that I gave you, that the fifth one at the back is one of a number of images provided around the design detailing. It's considered that proposed building would make a positive contribution to the existing street scene, acting as the intended landmark on this corner site for reason more than it simply being 11 stories in height. And so, subject to the matters that are covered on page 31 to be included in a legal agreement, the recommendations before you are to grant conditional permission subject to the 106 agreement, including delegated authority to amend and add conditions. And obviously that's particularly relevant for the comments made by Southern Water. I want to review the condition around the drainage solution so that it covers the matters that Southern Water have requested. And the second recommendation is to refuse the proposal if the legal agreement isn't completed within 3 months of any resolution. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Whiteley and Mr. O'Donnell, you had 12 minutes between you to bring your representations to us.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Andrew Whiteley and I'm from Glenmore Student Property Limited. We are delighted to present this development, which will provide high-quality, purpose-built student accommodation for those studying in Portsmouth. We have delivered more than 1,500 purpose-built student beds since 2014 in towns and cities across the UK, including Bournemouth, Southampton, Exeter, Cardiff, Birmingham, Durham, Edinburgh and Glasgow. Collegiate are the specialist student accommodation operator selected for this scheme, and their early involvement has ensured that the scheme is well thought out in terms of everyday operation and student demand. We believe in setting our schemes up for success from the outset, and we have appointed Create Construction to project manage the development of the design in line with our brief to ensure that it meets the requirements of specification, cost and buildability. Should planning permission be granted, then Create will also go on and construct the scheme. Day Architectural has been appointed as architects, and they have vast experience in designing and delivering student accommodation throughout the country. Neil O'Donnell is the scheme architect and is also here today to explain the design evolution process and rationale employed in designing the development. As set out within our planning application submission and your officer's report, the development supports the Council's key policies for Portsmouth and, crucially, will comprehensively regenerate a site that is currently underutilised whilst funding the delivery of purpose-built accommodation within the city. I hope the committee is able to support the officer's recommendation today and approve the application. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Neil O'Donnell from Day Architectural, and we are the architects for the scheme that you see before you today. Over the past few months, we've worked closely with your officers to deliver a scheme which responds to the specific characteristics of the site and the local area, and appropriately address the prominent Coburg Street, Holbrook Road junction, along with the adjacent public realms to the north. As Andrew has already mentioned, the scheme is to be developed in order to deliver the client's tried and tested product that will be well maintained and managed by Collegiate. In keeping with our client's ethos, there are a number of key design principles which have underpinned the scheme's development. Firstly, to create a landmark scheme which creates a positive impact on the locale whilst being sensitive in regards of its impact on the surrounding townscape. And secondly, to create a high quality city centre student accommodation that will be a welcomed addition to the Portsmouth skyline. The site context has been a strong influence on the development of the mass and overall proposals of scale. The Holbrook Road and Coburg Street intersection has allowed for a strong presence in the form of a tower element that offers a response back to the cityscape, and the more residential setting along Coburg Street has required a more sensitive approach with regards to the scale and urban grain. The site's location at this intersection has influenced the creation of a dual active frontage and gives the proposal a strong street presence. The proposed L-shaped building creates a protected courtyard for end users and allows a communal space that does not impact on the local community. A restrained material palette would add a sense of simplicity to the facade's articulation, and one that will be reflected of its contextual surrounding, yet allowing the development to stand out in its own right. The articulation of the facade and windows composition follows the function of the planned form, with the size and setting out of the window apertures being considerate to the semi-private nature of the development. The introduction of larger glazed elements to the ground floor will help create an active frontage to the development, offering a relief to the overall mass and adding self-surveillance to the streetscape. As mentioned earlier, we have worked closely with the case officer in order to present a scheme the local authority can ultimately support. Some minor amendments have been made to the scheme in order to respond to the comments received from the design review panel, which principally relate to the introduction of the glazing on the north elevation. We have also provided further details of the nature and extent of the articulation to the facades, which we may accept have not been clearly shown in the original application drawings. The CGI renders which have been circulated today hopefully demonstrate our client's commitment to developing a scheme which is well considered in terms of design and overall quality. It is hoped that the development will set a new standard for student accommodation in the city, and therefore hope that you are able to support your officer's recommendation in order to enable our client's proposals to be delivered. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. We come to members' questions. There are quite clearly some major areas which need to be looked at here, which have been raised in the report. Questions of design, questions of the size of the rooms, questions of communal space, and questions of the use throughout the year. So we turn to members' questions. First of all, Councillor Stubbs.
Thank you, Chairman. That's an interesting picture because the building there in some ways looks like a half-size version of the Crown Estates property being built at the moment just to the north of the station. And my criticism I would make of that building is not the shape of it, but is the materials. So, I mean, I think it's actually turned out, now that it's partially constructed, that particular one, to be something of a disappointing building. And at least as far as we can tell, because it's not finished, and I attribute that mostly to the panelling and the windows and so forth, because after all, the shape of a tall building, it's going to be an oblong, isn't it? What else can it be? So I just wondered if you could make a few comments just in relation to, when I have looked at the report and I see the condition, but just about the materials used and about the windows.
So,
and so your question concerned the materials used for the windows and the materials used for the walling, was that correct?
Yes, that's right, and any contrast you could draw between that and the Crown development.
okay, this is predominantly brick, obviously with these bronze feature panels, some of which are perforated at lower levels to add some further interest. The building that you refer to by Crown did start as stacked brickwork, but because that building was more than 18 stories high, they sought amendments to the scheme to use terracotta tiles in place of the stacked bonded brickwork post-Grenfell. This is an 11-storey building. It doesn't have the same problems that Crown did. And obviously, this has got the same materials throughout the whole of the building, whereas the Crown one had a rain screen cladding solution on part of the building. This particular building is designed with a sort of simple order by having, I say, predominantly brick, but it includes some banding, horizontal banding of natural stone.
Is that actual brick, or is this panels in the way? I mean, if you look at Chaucer House, you've got panels there which look like brickwork and locked together, and when the building's brand new they look fine. I've no idea how they're going to age. Is this actual brickwork, or is this a panel that looks like brick?
Well, that's part of the difficulty that we've got the architect here. Perhaps they can explain to you whether they are using some kind of systems approach. The fact that there are some projecting elements, it would strike me difficult to do as some kind of panelled solution. But do you want to help me out?
Yeah, I mean, at this juncture, whether it's panelled or brickwork is undecided. However, the aspiration is to have traditional brickwork in there. There's obviously a number of different bonds in there that we've proposed. A Flemish bond, which would be much easier to do as a traditional brick approach. So, you know, it is our aspiration to do this as traditional brickwork. Just to expand on the facade, it's hoped the additional renders that we've provided explain our kind of rationale behind the facade. It is very simple, it is very organised. However, it's the layering of those materials and the depth of facade that we're trying to create is what we feel gives it the interest. The case officer is very picked up on the horizontal bands. You know, the idea of these separating Portland stone bands that allows the material to fly up around the back of it, and there's a space there, we think add real interest to the facade. It's hoped as well that it does appear more rationalised than the scheme that was approved for outline, and you know, it's one that, you know, we really support and actually really excited about to ultimately deliver.
Councillor Stagg.
Thank you, Chair. I'm concerned about dropping off and picking up. Is the entrance going to be on the front of the building onto Holbrook Road? Is that where people will drop off students?
Yeah.
Pardon?
The entrance is at the intersection of Holbrook and Coburg.
That's an incredibly busy junction. And concerns me greatly. I mean, are you going to have? Is there going to be a driveway so that you can actually pull in, because that roundabout there is in constant use?
That's at the heart of the concerns raised by the local highways authority, in that it's a cul-de-sac, and at the moment the information the applicants have provided more information than those that did the outline scheme, but not to satisfy the Highways Authority at the moment. But I think, as I already explained, the reason why we're recommending it is because it was a matter, in terms of consistency of decision making, that was considered capable of being resolved through a properly sort of thought through scheme. And I mean, one option, for instance, would be the availability of the parking to the deaf centre during those periods of arrivals and collection of students at the beginning and end of the academic year.
I was just looking at the map, and to actually get there, you could go into Coburg Street and drop off at the back, but there's no room to turn around because Coburg Street is very narrow, and as you say, it's virtually a cul-de-sac. There's a pathway through. But even to get to the back there, you'd have to come down Fratton Road, turn right into Arundel Street, turn right then next into Clifton Street, then left into Coburg Street, which is a bit, it's a bit of a, and then you meet cars that are coming the other way coming out. 127 people, I know they're not going to be going out at the same time, but they'd probably be leaving more or less on the same day, so it is a concern. I mean, I suppose that's a comment rather than a question, but can something be done about it?
Just maybe come in. A solution needs to be found, and with all these halls, we have. I think it's less a problem at the end of term because there is staggered times in leaving. It is that first day of term where you have everybody arriving. So, as Alan said, it is a matter that we think that there must be a solution for to deal with that situation, that peak situation for one day a year. But it is something that will need to be worked through if a planning permission is granted to see what exactly we can put in place as an arrangement for that one day a year event to ensure that the rest of the highway network and other users aren't unacceptably inconvenienced.
Can this be done by condition?
That's the normal way we deal with these things.
Other questions? Councillor Pitt.
Yes, I'm a bit confused because I don't remember. I've sat on this. It's the third time I've sat on this flipping building. I'm not aware that we had such a big debate about the pick up and drop off last time. And if so, was that because the Highways comments are stronger or different this time, Peter, than they were on the previous occasion? What's changed?
I think the comments on the previous occasion was when that car parking block to the east was also included in the application site, and we thought there was scope for set down pickup to happen in that at that time. My concern at the moment is that we establish an arrangement such that we don't have people dropping off on Holbrook Road.
Possibly, but the red line covers the same area that the last application covered, albeit not the same area that the first application covered. Is that correct? So again, that means that when we first approved this for a student hall and the car park, the garages were included, and that, as I recall, that element of the building was stepped back, which was why we considered that the turning might be possible. Are we saying that when it was amended and the red line was changed to where it is now, we didn't change our consideration with regard to the pick-up and drop-off? So what I'm saying is, in order to be consistent, is it possible for us to have a problem with it now on the basis that it wasn't drawn to our attention on the last occasion?
That's why the report is written the way that it is, that in order that the local planning authority is consistent in its decision making, on balance it was felt appropriate to put aside the concerns of the local highways authority and for the matter to be covered by a provision within the 106 agreement, which was the way that the previously approved outline scheme for 80 had been dealt with.
Chair, with your indulgence. That's just not going to work, is it? We've sat on the committee with the information that was in front of us, with the expertise that we were offered on that occasion. The expertise was incomplete and insufficient in order to inform our view. There were no strong thoughts on that second of this being the third occasion. On the second occasion, there were no strong thoughts about this pick-up and drop-off issue. So it's not us that would be inconsistent as a planning committee, it's the advice that we were offered. So although I realise that that may affect the planning authority, it does not necessarily undermine the opinion of this committee. Is that correct?
That is correct, Councillor Pitt.
Thank you, Chair. I'll come back with more and other people have had a go.
Others? I think, Councillor Pitt, you are going to perform again.
Okay, I wanted to give others a shot. The second point then that I wanted to ask about was the number of representations received on this one. There was an article in the press yesterday which was there for all to see, a whole bunch of people saying they objected to this. Is it correct that we've had only one written representation from anyone on this?
I've only seen one, yes.
No petitions received or anything like that, just for transparency?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
And no representation from the university opposing the scheme?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you, Alan.
There's one representation from a Fratton resident.
Is it, that one's from the union?
They made demand for the student housing now or something.
Yeah, so...
I think I've read in the report that there was one objection received from the university on the grounds that there was too much student housing.
That was reiterating, or that was the advice given on the previous outline application.
Okay, in terms of the massing of the building, one of the considerations on the two previous occasions we looked at this was the step-back nature of the frontage onto the corner, with those sort of cross-angled steel beams or whatever they were, providing some relief and a view around the corner because traffic is part of the consideration. Can we know where the actual curtilage of the building is now in relation to where it was before? So on that basis, is it fair to say that this design increases the massing on the site from the road from road level? Okay, but before, the public could walk around the outside of the building and stay on the highway. They can't do that anymore, can they? Final question. The size of the units are below the size that could be used for any other use than student accommodation. Is that correct? And if so, what possible future use could this building ever have if it was not student accommodation?
Compared with some others, 18 square metres is still a reasonable size. But yes, it's less than the 25 square metres in the previous scheme. And if we had to speculate on how that building might be used, some other type of co-living type arrangement, or it would need to be remodelled to be a series of larger self-contained flats that achieve the minimum national space standards.
Councillor Udi.
With regard to how tall the building is, if you think about that whole area from like Holbrook, Lake Road, Fratton Road, Arundel Street, you've got Crown Court, Lords Court and stuff. How tall is that in comparison to the building here?
Okay. So the images don't help us that much. Right. Wigmore House is 3 stories. Lord's Court here is 4 stories, and then at the top end of the park it's 6 stories. But obviously this is in an area of opportunity for a tall building, and 10 stories has previously been found to be acceptable. So the judgment call for members is whether an additional story on the street frontage is acceptable from design point of view. I mean, you can make a building and a tower more slender in appearance by it being taller. Sorry to say.
Any other questions from members? A question from me, coming back to a point which has been raised. The occupancy area is 25 metres squared, which needs to remove at least 5 metres, 5.5 metres, for the kitchen space, and another couple of metres, square metres, for the shower or bath space. This would seem to reduce the actual living space in an area which has got not much in the way of communal living space. So the students' living space to about, 11 square metres. Is this normal, or is this small by the standards which we have been looking at over the years?
If you compared the 18 square metres here to some of the schemes that have been done by Unite, my understanding is that they may be sort of 10 to 12 square metres. So 18 would be more generous. I mean, you can see that there's, this is showing a bed, some storage, a desk, a place to eat, somewhere to keep and prepare some food, and then have WC, sink, and shower in an ensuite. So 18 square metres for a student halls would be a good level of provision, but it isn't the same level of provision that was provided in a sort of more generous previous scheme. This is obviously the accessible unit. That's 30 and a half.
Councillor Pitt.
Question for Peter. In the report says there's 40 cycling spaces, and that's considerably less than we would normally expect to see. How does that compare with the number of cycling spaces that were being offered when it was an 80-unit site?
We had 60 cycle spaces offered when it was an 80-unit site.
So to be clear, then a 50% reduction in the number of spaces and a 50% increase in the number of units.
Broadly.
Any other questions, members? Comments? Councillor Stubbs, then Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, firstly, just in terms of the decision we're making today, well, the principle of a student accommodation on this site of roughly this height at its apex is already established. So really primarily what we're looking at is the change in design, and I think the change in design is an improvement. So it will be perverse not to approve the scheme, and I'm going to recommend, I'm going to move the officer's report. I just want to make a couple of other comments. So the principle, I mean, I've always been a supporter of these major student developments, so we have. I think it's been, overall, it's a good thing for the city. It increases the supply of specialist housing, reduces pressure elsewhere. In an ideal world, I would prefer then perhaps be a bit closer to the middle. Some of these outer ones like we've had here and in Fratton Road are, really in terms of land use, so I prefer locations nearer to the city centre. But obviously we have a market-driven economy, and which I'm fully supportive of. So I am content with what we've got in front of us. I do have to say one other thing though, and I apologise to the applicants for bringing this up, but we heard before this meeting started from Judith Smythe that this site belongs to the Labour Party, and we have had in the press not long ago Stephen Morgan denouncing the previous version of this scheme for having student properties rather than affordable housing, and the implication was that that was somehow by an action of the council, or the council ought to do something about it. Well, it seems that the reason we're looking at student housing is because the Labour Party has decided to sell their site to a student housing provider in order to maximise the income for the Labour Party. So Stephen Morgan needs to take responsibility for the decision of his party and not blame it on someone else.
Councillor Stubbs, and I would ask you not to stray from planning matters. But I believe you have proposed the officer's recommendation. Councillor Jones.
It's not very often that my deputy leader causes me blushes, but anyway, getting back to the planning specific requirements. I mean, it's a not very attractive looking building that's there at the moment. It's been a long time. When you read back through the case history going back to 2004, 2005, it's been a long time in the coming. And I remember having conversations with an agent on behalf of the trustees of the Labour Party about the PCC freehold to the east of the site about 2 years ago when they were thinking, they were playing around with different designs then. So I think that the principle of the housing on this site is entirely correct. It is going to have a big impact on Holbrook Road. It's a big old building and it's built right up to the boundary. If it had been built the other way round with the lower level on the Holbrook Road side and then building up towards Fratton Road, it probably would have felt slightly softer to the landscape around, but I don't believe that that is such a significant opinion of mine that it would ever be substantiated at an appeal, so I won't bother to pursue that one. So in terms of PCS 10 and PCS 19, the principle of housing and our housing delivery requirements as a planning authority, we can't do anything, I don't think, but support it. In terms of PCS 23 design, I'm not overly keen on it, but it's difficult from a CGI to what would I like? I love tall buildings, I love glass, but actually would glass really fit in that area? It's not really a kind of wowie glass tall building type location, so probably I think the architects have done a good job considering the location it's in, but I think the proof will be in the pudding when it's built, such as Station Square and the site that Councillor Stubbs was referring to, so I'm happy to second the proposal to move the officer's recommendation for conditional permission.
Councillor Horton, Councillor Stagg, Councillor Udy.
Thank you, Chair. I think I wasn't on the previous planning committees when it was decided, so I'm going to go with what we're deciding on today, which is a tall building. I think I agree with Councillor Jones really. I think that the imposition of it on that area is really quite stark, but anyway, I'm going to leave that. I'm just concerned about what Councillor Pitt brought up about the cycle storage and what we've been talking about earlier on. I mean, I know that the university discourages students from having cars in the city. And I understand that that's emphasised more when they are in their own halls of residence, but also other halls of residence. But they can bring cars to the city. In this particular area, they genuinely won't be able to get their car anywhere near it. Therefore, I think the need for more cycle storage is stronger than less. So that, I don't know whether that could be, I don't know whether the design lends itself to improving that, but I actually think that's a crucial part of this, because the dropping off and the picking up bit, we know, is a really intensified period of time. But actually the day-to-day living, students sometimes bring cars when they're living in halls of residence and try and find parking nearby. But actually, not only could you not park nearby here, you can't even get your car near it at all. And I think the message should go out that actually that the increased numbers of bedrooms should be reflected with increased number of cycle storage.
Councillor Stagg.
Yes, I'd like to reiterate what Councillor Horton has said. The cycle storage particularly, I mean, as you know, as Cabinet Member for Transport, I'm trying to get rid of cars off the road and increase cycling. So please help me by putting in some more cycle storage. But the other thing is, I mean, I'm not against, like Councillor Jones, I'm not against tall buildings at all. I love the Zurich building refurbished, and Catherine House, and the one on Eisenbahn Brunel Road. And even, but it's out of character. I came along the bus today, going past it, and well, yeah, very close to it. It's just totally out of character with the rest of the area. Now, if it was an iconic building like the Lipstick Tower, the one down in Queen Street, it is that one, isn't it? That is such an iconic building. It doesn't matter that it's out of character with the rest of the area, because it is. That's not iconic. It's a block, and. So, just my comment. But please, more cycle storage, and I suppose we'll have to give permission to it. But I'm not happy about it being where it is.
Councillor Udi.
So I wasn't on the other, is it 2 or however many there was here? So I'm taking it as how I see it today. This is one of probably 3 student things that have gone in Fratton in the Fratton area recently. You've got the tall building, which is above Domino's, and the old trades club's just gone in as well. So studentification is hitting Fratton at an alarming rate right now. I'm a representative in Charles Dickens ward, which is where this is based, and the flats behind, because obviously you haven't put real buildings in the background there, they're just white. So the buildings behind, you've got the brick house, which is Wigfield House. Do you say Wigmore House or Wigfield? And then you've got Crown and Lord's Court. When I was campaigning earlier in the year, everyone in Crown and Lord's Court were constantly telling me that their buildings haven't been refurbished in years, and these are PCC-owned buildings, and I've been trying to find out maintenance schedules, but I don't think that I rarely see them being kept to as a council. And it makes me think maybe if this building went in, that more attention would be paid to the area and the residents that actually lived around it, but I'm not too sure, because buildings like this student block going in, where it's going in, is going to make the residents in the social housing around it absolutely hate the students. And we're seeing an us versus them mentality. It's only getting worse. It really is only getting worse. Every time I go to a residents meeting, I am being shouted at. But for students, I am a student. I'm a third year mature student. I was trying to explain that. And I'm like, it's not the students, it's where the money is right now. This is where the money is. I'm really sorry, but the building is so ugly. I really can't stand it. And I think it's so out of keeping with the area. I know that the old Labour Club just needs to be knocked down, because it does look pretty horrible as well. But if you think about that whole big block, and I know it's old social housing, but that against it, juxtaposed against it, just makes it look really weird. And I hope that other councillors might help me, because I can't figure out a way on any policy, because I'm new on the planning committee. I've got other staff, and also about disruption of traffic. I know we're going to have it on the first day of term and the last day, or the kind of the end of term, but if they little bike storage, and I think we need more, but you need money to live in these student accommodations, and if they've got money, then they're constantly going to be ordering Ubers and food. There will be constant traffic around that area, and the only way they can get in is through Arundel Street and go around into the cul-de-sac. But as you've approved 2 other things, I feel like this is totally out of my hands. So what can we do? And thank you for listening to my TED Talk.
It is within your right to propose rejection of this on design grounds. You would need a seconder for that to come up. But
then I would like to do that, please. Thank you.
Yes, I'll second that.
So, for the rejection on design grounds proposed by Councillor Udy, seconded by Councillor Stagg. And cycle storage, okay. Councillor Pitt?
Yes, I was going to put in cycle storage because I genuinely believe that, because I sat on the committee last time this was discussed,
Yeah.
and it was a marginal decision as I recall it, especially for me, saying that there was going to be 80 units and 60 cycle storage spaces, but rationally, will every single student have a bike? No. Do students own more than one bike? No. So 60 seemed livable with. 40 cycle storage spaces for 123 flats is quite clearly not enough. It's not right on top of the main university campus. There's a walk-in. As Councillor Udy's pointed out, we have a situation where these will not be bargain basement student flats. They will be students with a significant amount of income because of the nature of the rental costs for them. We all know that. That being the case, you can assume that these people would be able to afford to buy a bicycle. And if they can afford to buy a bicycle, they might want to keep it somewhere. So on the basis that there is insufficient cycle storage, in addition to the other comments, I'm happy to support the motion for refusal.
Yes, both. So both the proposer and seconder for rejection are on design and cycle storage grounds? Yes? Yes.
Can we just ask the members, because if we do refuse this, firstly, I think we need to establish whether there is the ability to accommodate additional cycling within the layout, and therefore whether it should be a refusal or a deferral on that point alone. But in terms of the design, what are we making those judgments of design against, given that we've granted 2 permissions on this site? So that we are clear in our minds that when we get to potentially a public inquiry, what it is we're really arguing on, because just saying design in itself isn't going to give us enough detail and enough proper consideration against the design considered against what, particularly given we have permissions that are already been granted on this site.
Councillor Jones, then Councillor Stubbs.
Thank you very much. You know, money in this council is at a premium, like all councils, and I don't feel I would be doing my job if I didn't say, and I don't know what the reasons for design will be from colleagues, but I would really ask them to be as thorough and as specific as they can about this, because when we do go to appeal, which inevitably we can't predetermine what the applicant will do, but, you know, we may as well write a cheque now, because we are literally going to flush out tens of thousands of pounds down the toilet in a fine, because unless there's a very good reason on design principles, I don't believe that this will be upheld, and we should not be reckless with public money.
Councillor Stubbs.
Conscious of a lot of these student schemes, obviously you have to finish these things for September or you miss a whole year. Would it be in order to ask the applicant to comment on from that aspect, and to ask the applicant whether he might consider, when other members have raised issues about cycle storage, whether there's any trade-off over that before we vote to avoid what could be an unpleasant refusal?
Yes, I think this is possible, and I think alongside that you might also ask about the facilities for transport being made for the accessible flats. So it is a question of students getting from this place to the university, questions to the developer.
Thank you. If I could firstly make a comment about cycle storage. From our own experience of developing and operating, owning purpose-built student accommodation around the country, we find that typically no more than 20 to 25% of students own and ride bicycles. So our view and our experience is that by providing the number of spaces that we have in the scheme, that it's probably more than sufficient for the number of students who are going to be living there and owning bicycles. But certainly we could look at increasing the number of cycle storage spaces if that's deemed appropriate by the committee.
And the other concern which does arise out of that is the mobility of people in the X3 accessible flats. Will there be place for storage of mobility aids for those people if they require them?
Yes, I mean we do have a management suite there, so there there is allocation there that if a small storage area was required, then it could be facilitated within the management suite. Just to obviously reiterate Andrew's comments, if cycling was an additional requirement, then we could certainly look at that. There is space within the landscape to increase the cycle store if that was a recommendation. Absolutely.
Councillor Pitt.
Just wondering if we can try and help with this a bit. On the development side of the road, the hashed area that's on Coburg Street, is there any possibility there of doing what we looked at on Fratton Road by the old bingo site and having recessed loading bay put in there with limited time waiting put on it? So the pavement recessed back, time waiting, loading bay, I'm particularly concerned about the disabled residents being able to be dropped off and picked up. That would facilitate that. And if it was time limited, as we proposed on Fratton Road, for similar reasons, that might be a solution that would enable us to look at all. It would also create enough space for a vehicle potentially to turn around. If it's possible and the applicant would agree to at least look at it, I'd be happy to review that with the additional condition that we can find some more cycling spaces. I mean, Councillor Jones and Councillor Stubbs have said we don't want to throw money away. I mean, I think it's always subjective what a building looks like, but I am concerned about the lack of cycling spaces and creating a precedent for the same to occur elsewhere. And I do think that is in itself a material consideration that won't make us look daft. But the turning round the cars is more important.
I would point out to members that if you look at page 32, recommendation 1 is delegating authority to the Assistant Director of City Development to add and amend conditions where necessary. So do you think, members, that would the proposer and seconder be happy to add into their proposal and for acceptance of this application that delegated authority be given to the Assistant Director and a particular mention be made of these mobility considerations for cycle and for the residents of the green flats?
We have an officer comment on that before we make any decision.
What do you reckon?
Sorry, one person speaking. Sorry, Councillor Stubbs, could you just repeat your question?
No, the comment was that under recommendation 1 you can adjust or amend conditions. If the proposer asked you, would you be prepared to put into that improving the cycle facilities and for mobility for the accessible flats would be something which you would have to consider as part of that
If you
authority?
Specifically, as part of that delegation, specified the areas you want me to look at. So in terms of the cycle parking, I think, we've heard that there's some evidence around the level of demand generated by space. So it would be sensible for us to see some evidence around that demand to establish the exact number that we should be looking to achieve. So within the delegation, you could delegate for me to increase the number of cycling spaces. And part of that would be looking at the evidence of other similar halls of residence to see what that number should actually be, so that we actually get a number that is reflective of the behaviour of the students going further, and whether there's also a different option. So, some of our developers are now in some of the schemes that haven't yet come to application stage, are talking about things like cycling, sort of a rental offer rather than an own it. So whether there is a different offer as well that could be looked at that might be even better for the students and their parents, because then they wouldn't have to buy the bikes. So as part of that, we can look at that. And we can also look at, because within the highway there is a turning area, and look at how that could be used to form a drop-off and pick-up space. I think actually, because you've got quite a limited pavement width in front of the building, if we were going to try and create a different space, it might then have implications for sort of the connectivity point and pedestrian use, or might then result in the need for a redesign to the building. So I'm not sure whether we can actually achieve an actual creation of a lay-by, but you have got quite a significant turning head at the top of Coburn Street that we can look at and see whether we can accommodate a dedicated drop-off and pick-up point for people that are less able.
Whilst you have that turning space, that turning head there is also required for people whose residence is on Coburg Street. So I think that the suggestion made by Councillor Pitt has merit. And if that could be achieved, I think it would overcome the problem.
I also asked, just out of courtesy, just to see if the applicant wants to make any comment on that, because obviously, I know it's sort of sprung a bit here, but if there's any initial comment you want to make on that, I think it would be helpful.
I've just been informed we do have a planning consultant on board, and she's just informed me that we do potentially have 2 spaces that comes with this.
Okay. If you wish to speak, can you come and use one of the microphones? For 2 reasons. 1, it needs to be recorded, and 2, that I'm getting very old and deaf.
My understanding is that there is space for 2 cars to park on Coburg Street. They're kind of unrestricted parking bays. They're not necessarily associated with the building, but they are there, able to be utilised. So it's not kind of double yellow lines all the way along, as I understand it. They're immediately outside the building at the front, at the very bottom of Coburg Street.
Councillor Stagg?
People know the Ibis Hotel just off. They've got a sort of a drive-in curb thing, so you can drive in, drop off, and then drive out. I don't know if that's possible on the layout. And very similar sort of thing, which is on Eisenbad Brunel, where the new block is.
Are there any other comments? No? Right. You have before you, councillors, the recommendation a recommendation for approval, which includes giving delegated authority to the Assistant Director of City Development to add or amend conditions as necessary, or if necessary, to refuse the planning application. And I think you have made it very clear that there are certain matters which you would like to be taken into consideration by the Assistant Director if you approve this planning application today. Correct? I assume silence is correct.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I'm happy to accept that as a proposer. I think that if we end up with an approval under these circumstances, it will be helpful to have an update at maybe the next, or the subsequent anyway, committee meeting on what's happening.
Okay. And that's seconded. Okay, any further comments before I go to a vote? Those in favour of the officer's recommendation as proposed by Councillor Stubbs and seconded by Councillor Jones, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those against, please show. That is carried. You do have your planning permission in conjunction with discussions with our Chief Officer. Thank you very much. In which case, members, a 10-minute break, which will allow us to go and find Councillor Smythe, who is probably hiding around the building somewhere. Since the live streaming is continued, you're reminded not to use the microphones.
Hi, Mum.
Members? Which is all right, that's all right. We come now to the third application before us this afternoon, 92 Osborne Road. Members will recall that this was deferred for further information at our meeting on the 25th of July. Questions of refuse, questions of storage facilities, questions of evacuating the building in event of fire, and I think also questions of extraction. There is also a change in the application which you have before us from that which we looked at on the 25th of July, in which the applicant now proposes to close the premises at 11 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays and 10:30 on Sundays to Thursdays, rather than 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. So it is in some ways changed, and in other ways we are looking at the issues which we felt were not satisfactory, we were not satisfied about in the earlier application. Would Mr. and Mrs. Kitchen please come to the table? Well, Mr. Kitchen, please come to the table. Can I have the officer's report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Just to clarify, first of all, there is a supplementary matters item, just two very small tweaks to conditions 3 and 9, just relating to approved plan numbers. And a point of clarification that the only changes to this application relate to the clarification of points over refuse storage and fire escape. All of the other conditions and the report is as you considered previously. So for the benefit of those of you that weren't here at the last meeting, the application relates to a small two-storey commercial premises located to the southern side of Osborne Road, just to the west of its junction with Palmerston Road, the pedestrianised section of Palmerston Road just in here. Planning permission is sought for the change of use of the premises from a shop within Class A1 to a cafe/restaurant within Class A3, and the installation of an external flue to replace a redundant refuse chute. Just a couple of photographs showing the front of the premises, with a bank this side, a bank on the other side, the entrance to residential units that are located above the premises. The rear of the site showing the external fire escape and the rear of residential dwellings, backing onto Ashby Place, which is a public car park and a series of service areas. You will recall this picture. This is the small storage area, the fire escape down from the residential units above, and access through the gates here. These bins are not associated with the development, but other commercial uses sort of beyond these parking spaces. In terms of the principle of development, policy STC4 of the Southsea Town Centre Area Action Plan encourages the siting of restaurants and cafe uses within Osborne Road. In the absence of any specific limits on the number of restaurant and cafe uses, it's considered that the proposal remains acceptable in principle. This slide just shows the current internal layout. So at ground floor level, just laid out as a shop, currently used as a watch makers and repairers, and office accommodation at upper floor level. Above this is 2 further stories of residential accommodation. Following concerns initially raised by the environmental health team, the kitchen has been moved from upper floor of the premises to ground floor, so giving the separation to the residential uses above, and the applicant has agreed reduced opening hours, which is the same as we considered previously. With the inclusion of these conditions to control opening hours, the use of the rear doors onto the fire escape and the extraction equipment, it's considered that concerns of the environmental health team have been addressed. In reaching this conclusion, regard has been made to a recent appeal decision for a similar proposal within Marmion Road, which has a quieter character than that to Osborne Road, and this decision is set out within page 41 of your reports. The revised plan also shows that there is adequate access to and from the fire escape, which serves the premises itself and the residential units above. Visually, there would be very little change to the external appearance of the building. You can see the existing chute, the refuse chute that extends up through the middle of the staircase, would be replaced with something very similar of an external flue, which would be linked back into the kitchen at ground floor level. In terms of means of escape, which was raised by members at the last planning committee, just a series of photographs here just showing that this is a separate internal staircase that serves the residential units, which is located in here, which provides an alternative route to the external fire escape should there be a fire within the commercial kitchen. There is also a large terrace area that extends towards the Palmerston Road frontage, which you can just see from these elevations here, which would provide adequate space for people to move away from a fire in this location while they await rescue, and there's also a series of windows and alternative escape routes. We have consulted Hampshire Fire and Rescue since the last planning committee meeting, and they've raised no objection to the proposal. Any outstanding matters in terms of fire suppression within the kitchen itself they've highlighted as issues that can be considered by the building control regime. In terms of refuse storage, I've carried out a further site visit with the City Council's waste management team and the applicants, and following the removal of the redundant equipment, which you can just see in here, and in this corner, they're satisfied that there's adequate space within this area for the storage of refuse bins associated with both the restaurant and the residential units above. The waste management team are also satisfied that if this isn't sufficient, then the occupier and operator of the restaurant could look at daily collections, which is not uncommon for restaurants within the city. Members, you have a detailed report in front of you, and for the reasons set out, the application comes with a recommendation of conditional permission. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Kitching, you have 6 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. Again, I'm representing myself and Mrs. Kitchen as owner of 94 and 100 Osborne Road and our tenants. I'm also representing Mr. and Mrs. Yeshi of 98 Osborne Road, the NatWest Bank, and the owners of the freehold of 68 Palmerston Road, which consists all of these premises, including flat 96, and is the owner of the shop which is getting leased. All the residents have raised their concerns in regards to the extension of the hours, the noise, the refuse that is going to cause, which will be associated with rubbish, rats, anything like that. And the fact that the fire escape will now end inside the door of an operating commercial kitchen, because on your proposal you didn't show anything to change the fire escape. So the fire escape will still go down straight into the door, because the kitchen, instead of being up in the second floor, will be down. So the fire escape ends inside of a kitchen door, which we all know with kitchens usually half the time stays open. The added kitchen will either have to have duct instead of the refuse, which will mean they'll have to have some kind of extra causing vibration, and it will either limit the height of the passage, or you'll have to go jump over it, because there is no connection between the door to it, because if you put it on the side, you'll block the stairs completely. So nowhere in your planning have you actually addressed it. You said you're going to put it somewhere, but it either stuck on the ceiling or on the bottom, which will still be in the way of evacuating. In front of you, on the right-hand side, this is the door exit for the fire escape for NatWest Bank. So if they have escaped, they have to run out of that side. We still having the same concerns in regards to this planning application to change the shop to a restaurant. We believe that if you approve it, this is going to lower the standards of the life of the residents. It will put the life of fire escape and all of that in risk. It will increase rubbish, increase noise due to the opening hours, and will reduce the quality of life of anybody living in these premises. All these changes that you said in rubbish, we're not actually changing anything with the fire escape. And just to again reiterate what Mr. Christie told you last time, this is a complete speculative application done by the leaseholder of 92 that have 4 years left on an 8,000 a year lease. They don't own the premises. They've never got any permission from Mr. El Marouk and the owner of Rose Bay to make any alteration. They haven't granted permission, got permission to do any of these external changes. We are looking at a complete speculative proposition from a business owner to try and sell his business upwards at a better price than what he's currently getting. I'd like to thank you for letting me speak. Bill?
Thank you, members. I would remind members that what we are here to do is to examine how this fits with planning law, rather than the question of ownership and whether the ultimate owner will accept this. This is a matter of civil law, and we are not concerned with the questions of ownership. I hear what Mr. Kitching says, and I think, but it is not relevant to our consideration of this on planning grounds. So, members, questions? Yes, Councillor Smythe.
I have a question arising from what Mr. Kitchen said about the fire escapes and so on and so forth. I realise that's more a question of building regulations than of planning, I think, but you did mention it in your submission. Is it possible for you to answer the concerns raised by Mr. Kitchen on fire escapes and so on? Please.
Yes, that's fine. In terms of the fire escape, that will remain unchanged from its current position and routes out of the building. The only difference being is that instead of its door being to a watchmaker's, seller's, repairer's, it will be a door to a different type of commercial use, i.e. a commercial kitchen. There are conditions in place to require the doors to the rear of the building to remain closed, but in terms of access and egress from the fire escape, that will remain unchanged, and actually the removal of the redundant equipment in this corner will actually make that route a little wider.
And that's corroborated by your discussions with the fire officers, is it?
The fire officers' comments were based on the plans that you considered previously. Since then, we have actually managed to negotiate a betterment in terms of the fire escape, and also the removal of the extraction equipment to allow for the storage of refuse bins underneath the staircase, which remains, which leaves the highlighted in brown evacuation route unimpeded by the refuse bins.
Thank you.
Councillor Hooper.
I take on board what you were saying about the refuse, and if needs be, obviously there could be a daily collection. Who bears the cost of that? Is it the business or the council?
The council doesn't collect commercial waste. That's done by a commercial operator, so there are a number of different operators that could offer that service. Obviously, the more the collections, the higher the cost to the operator of that particular premises.
Well, whilst you're thinking, a couple of questions from the Chair. First of all, on extraction equipment, you have shown that extraction equipment will be removed, as you've just said. Where will that have any effect on the extraction from the kitchens and the restaurant themselves? That's the first question. So if you could have talked about the extraction equipment. Secondly, a refuse chute is being turned into some form of extraction duct. What effect will that have on the ability of the residents in the flats to get rid of their refuse? Because presumably that was their refuse chute, or is their refuse chute. And the third one, my third question, concerns this matter of timing. You said that there was reduced operating hours. This would appear, from what we see on page 38, to be extended operating hours because it was going to close at 10 p.m. and is now proposed to close at 11 p.m. Fridays, Saturdays, 10 p.m. Sundays and Thursdays, which would seem to be extended operating hours.
Okay. The first issue in respect of the extraction equipment, there are two conditions that require further details, the precise details of the manufacture, the routing of that extraction equipment from the restaurant, commercial kitchen itself, to the location where the extraction flue will extend up through the staircase. Those are matters that can be reserved by planning condition, and there are technical solutions to ensure that a flue can be installed without impeding access from that fire escape route. There's also technical details to be agreed in terms of noise associated with the extraction equipment, and we can ensure that there isn't excessive noise from that equipment, which would have to be installed internally within the kitchen if it cannot be accommodated externally, and there are technical solutions to resolve that matter. In terms of the refuse chute, on the 3 occasions I've visited the premises, it appears that the refuse chute is no longer in use. Even if it was in use, that would rely on a management of people collecting the refuse from the bottom of the refuse chute and then putting it into the bins within the storage yard. There is no evidence of that happening. There is no management of that area. It appears that the refuse is brought down and put into the bins within that area. So the removal of the refuse chute, I don't believe, is relevant to this particular matter. You have a resident that lives in that building, he may tell you differently. And then the final matter in respect of the opening hours. The application was submitted with extended opening hours. The proposed hours within the condition are reduced from those that were initially proposed, but the same as what was reported to you at the last committee meeting. And those are in line with the appeal decision in Marmion Road and considerably earlier than the opening hours of the adjoining commercial premises, which I believe is Cassia.
Members, other questions? Members' comments? Councillor Pitt.
I've still got concerns about the enforceability of keeping kitchen doors closed when people are going to be needing to potentially exit the building from a higher floor directly past a commercial kitchen. That hasn't changed, but the only thing we can do is impose the condition. And I would say to anyone with any concerns about that happening, that every single time it's opened, that the photograph is time-stamped and dated and sent into planning enforcement so that we can make sure that it is kept closed, because as we are aware of other premises where we have imposed this condition, it is regularly flouted. So it will be dependent on feedback from those who live in the vicinity if that is a problem, because with the door closed, it's not a fire risk. But if there was a fire in the kitchen and the door was thrown open and people were in the process of coming down that fire escape at that time, it could be dangerous, there is no doubt about that, albeit that there is another method of egress via the spiral staircase at the front of the building. But I still have reservations about it.
All right. Any further comments, members? No? Can I have a recommendation then? Yeah, Councillor Stubbs.
Well, I'll make a recommendation then, and I think, that the fact that members haven't, the fact that we didn't have a lot of debate and we didn't have a lot of challenge to some of the stuff that is in the report shows, I think, a recognition of the reality of the situation, which is that from a planning perspective, the application is probably okay. I can't think of I do take on board what Councillor Pitt had to say, but of course we can't start from the point of view that the conditions are not going to be kept to, even if we suspect they're not. So I will move the report.
Seconded? As a seconder? Councillor Jones has seconded. Any further comments, members? Sorry?
That's what I was just, Councillor Stagg and I were wondering through myself, sorry, I've got to go.
I think, Chair, we did have a fairly lengthy discussion prior. I don't think members of the public should be concerned. We haven't looked at this in quite a lot of detail in the past.
Yes, and this is true. And I think we have also got to bear in mind that we have looked at conditions, that there are civil matters which we cannot take into consideration. So we have a proposal in favour. Those in favour, please show. Those against, please show. The application is carried. Thank you. I would remind members that there is a further item on the agenda today. Right. The members. Sorry? Yes, it is part of the meeting. But it's not on the agenda. It is not on the agenda, but I am putting it on. I'm using my chairman's privilege, so to do. I have asked Mrs. Upton-Brown to talk to us about the A, planning enforcement, B, the information which will be given to members on planning enforcement, and C, how we will keep ourselves updated on planning enforcement.
Thank you, Chairman. So, as I highlighted at the beginning of the report, the enforcement policy, local policy, has now been agreed by PRED, and that just sets out the way we deal with enforcement matters in the city, both in terms of if you're the person that is being investigated for a potential breach of planning control, but also if you're the person on the receiving end of that complaint, which may resolve in a situation where there isn't a breach of planning control, and obviously for some people they find themselves in a situation where they carry out development without knowing that planning permission is required, and then find themselves in a difficult position in terms of the relationship with the council and carrying out work that inadvertently they didn't realise required planning permission. So the policy's published, and it covers sort of a wide range of things from householder extensions through to how we deal with situations that become quite serious where we've served notices, they're not complying with the notices, and what we then do in terms of court action to secure compliance, and in an extreme situation the last resort really is carrying out direct action, which we have one case recently that we got to that point where the next step would have been direct action, and we'd begun to prepare ourselves for how we might manage a situation where you're taking direct action. I've discussed with the Chair how it might be best to communicate with members about what's going on in the enforcement team, because I'm really conscious that whilst there is a high volume of work that is carried out in that team, we are probably not that good at publicising what's happening and what action we are taking. And it has been suggested that a potential route for communication may be bringing a report, a monthly report, to the planning committee to say these are all the, sort of at a high level. Obviously, it won't go into the details. These are the things that are going on, and then if there are specific cases where we've, for example, served an enforcement notice, we can confirm that enforcement notice has been served on this compliance period, etc. So there is that sort of visibility and transparency through this committee of that activity. So at the moment, I'm working with the enforcement team to try and create a template for that report that gives the correct level of detail without disclosing anything that we're not able to legally disclose because of sensitivities around the nature of the inquiry.
thank you. It's worth mentioning to members that this has also been backed up by a request from the PRED that we do consider these matters. It is a request, it's not a requirement, and but I think it's a very sensible request, and so I'm asking that this matter be put at the end of each agenda. Because the reason why I would like it at the end of each agenda is that there may be matters there which we will have to deal with without the press and public being present. So that is a suggestion from the chair. Is there any objection to that way forward? No?
It's an objection, really. It's more sort of a question as much as anything. So we've got a planning enforcement team with 2 people on it. So you've got, potentially 300 man-hours a month of work. And I'm conscious that if we don't want to be taking another 5 or 6 hours out of that, because that's like a 2% for reporting. So what are you suggesting that the officers would come and sit for a large part of the meeting in order to know when the meeting's going to end?
I would suggest that that would be a complete and utter waste of their time. What I'm suggesting is that the Assistant Director of Culture and City Development, on the basis of the weekly published reports, updates us on any matters which there has been major change or matters which she considers to be pertinent to our consideration.
I think that's fine.
Councillor Smythe.
I think this is a very good idea. Indeed, I was on the at the PRED meeting when we discussed it. Perhaps we could say that we'll review it after a year, because it just could be that it's undoable for some reason, or it's otherwise a problem for us. But otherwise, I would fully support this.
If it's undoable or causes problems, undoubtedly we will review it, yes. Okay, thank you very much for your attendance today, members. We'll see you at the next meeting.
I'm just going to turn off the